Hello and welcome back to A Shark's Perspective. Today, more than ever, businesses are producing content nonstop, and so much of it. A lot of brands are creating more brand noise than the noise that surrounds them. And that's the goal, right? To rise above the fold of other noise? No. What about the consumer and the content you should be creating to help establish trust with your customer? How do we create that level of trust in a world of noise, especially with content marketing? Katie Martell is an on-demand marketer and communication strategist and a self-proclaimed unapologetic marketing truth-teller. And on this episode, we'll discuss building trust with content, noise, content shock, the ROI of content marketing, whether to outsource or insource your content efforts, knocking down silos, thought leadership, fast-pitch softball, Ben Affleck and Batman, Monique and Unique, and a lot more. So let's tune into an unapologetic truth-telling marketer with an unapologetic truth-telling shark on this episode of A Shark's Perspective. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today on A Shark's Perspective. If you would please tell us a little bit about your background and your career to date.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. My name is Katie Martell. I am an on-demand marketer, which is a very fancy way of saying I'm a freelancer. I also get to speak around the world, which is so amazing, about this crazy world of marketing and other topics, and MC events as well. So I have a really cool job that is one of those heightened careers. But my background is in B2B marketing, predominantly marketing to marketers, so tech and services directed at the marketing audience. I've been in that for over a decade now, and very grateful for that because when you market to marketers, you've got to be on your game.
Oh, yeah.
Marketers know all your scripts, all your tricks. You've got to be good. So I hope much of what I've put out into the world over my career in-house at PR firms and analyst firms, with my own tech company. I co-founded a startup in 2014. I've hoped that body of work has all been in service of the industry, which has brought me to today. I'm also working on a documentary, again, under this purpose of moving the industry forward. And it's earned me a nickname, Unapologetic Marketing Truth-Teller.
What the hell is that? Where'd it come from?
I started to write about some issues I was seeing in the world of marketing, predominantly around how brands pander to social movements, like the environment, for example. And a good friend of mine shared the article and wrote, "You've got to read this from Unapologetic Marketing Truth-Teller, Katie Martell." And I thought, you know how people say, your brand is what people say about you, not what you say?
Mm-hmm.
So let me live that ethos and take that amazing phrase and try to live up to it and own it. And it hasn't steered me wrong so far. I think we have to tell the truth to move our industries and ourselves forward.
Agreed. So let's dive into content marketing and talk a little bit further about that. First question, how do you make content stand out, be more unique than Monique? And, I think we're just seeing so much content put out there, but not a lot of it, I think, really is, fixing a lot of the customer problems. And it just sort of looks, I don't know, like vanilla, like you could take the logo off of half of it and it all look the same. How do you make that content stand out today?
I mean, you bring up a really good problem, which, the content shock problem of more companies than ever investing in content marketing to try to achieve growth goals, which is a great thing for buyers if companies are doing it right, providing something valuable, something relevant. But the problem that's created is what's being published, to your point, is a lot of the same, a lot of noise, which we've heard a lot about. We've heard content shock from Mark Schaefer forever. We've heard about the rise of brands as publishers. But I think what we don't realize, and to answer your question, I think we have to go to the heart of the problem. If brands are creating noise for buyers and for the audiences that they're publishing to, what actually happens is what we're doing is lowering the amount of trust that buyers have. Because noise, think about when you are in like a really chaotic conversation, maybe with your partner or your spouse or whoever.
Like earlier with me.
You're all just yelling. Yeah. Well, we've all been there. You're yelling at each other. You're getting heated. The last thing that you're doing when you're in this mode of loud chaos is the last thing you're doing is listening. The last thing you are is trusting. And if you're a marketer, you need to have not only attention, which we're all fighting for and paying for, but you need trust. And so we talk about, it's noisy out there. But what that does is create a lack of trust in the people that we're trying to sell to and get to believe us be loyal to us, love our brand, want to choose us, part ways with their money for us. And so if you look at that as the problem, how do we create then trust in a world of noise? That's where it becomes more important than ever to think about things like content, your communication strategy, your brand, your thought leadership as an avenue towards creating trust, not just breaking through or adding to the noise.
You probably see a lot of this with the content you create now for brands, because I've worked with a lot of content creators at agencies, especially larger agencies, where it's Johnny or Susie who's been brought to the table to write a content piece. They have very little background into your business that you're running day to day, and they write together something that they think that is creating that trust, but it's not. It's pretty vanilla, and if you're a consumer, you're going to that site. It's not really making you become more engaged or trusting of that brand. So how do we convey trust in what it is that we're writing in our content? Kind of dive a little bit deeper, if you will.
Certainly, and it's, again, thank you for letting me rant about this. This is the most important, and I think the most misunderstood part of content marketing is that
Agreed.
It's not enough to be valuable. To be honest, it's actually not enough just to provide education. What you have to be is incredibly relatable and relevant. Trust in general, humans are predisposed to trust. We want to trust. That's our nature. So there's some things we can tap into as marketers that help us to earn trust. And the first thing is showing our intent as a brand through our empathy. I know this sounds like fluff, but it's true. You have to ask yourself in this content, for example, that you've just hired your agency, that in your example to write, can buyers see themselves in our content? Do we look and sound like them? One company that does this really, really well is Stem Cell Technologies. Are you familiar with them?
Stem Cell? Yeah.
Stem Cell Technologies. They are a global biotech firm. My sister actually works there, and she's in marketing ops and sales ops. And they support academic and industrial scientists. It's a no-nonsense customer. They're inherently very skeptical about marketing. They dismiss anything that even hints at marketing fluff. And so this company has embraced an ethos as a business and in their content marketing that is scientists helping scientists, right? Again, back to this point of, can our buyers see themselves in our content? They embrace this. Most of the company has a PhD. Many others in the business, in marketing, sales, and R&D have advanced degrees, so that when they're creating content, what it does is it shows the buyer, not only do we understand you, but we are you. How many brands make that kind of commitment? To your point, how many people just outsource content to an agency and say, make us trustworthy to the buyer, right? This is real commitment. And the way that they bring it to life is they send these weekly science newsletters. They've got 20 of them free, going out every single week, aligned to the topics that scientists care about. They do all kinds of events, education, even podcasting, videos. They'll send posters by direct mail, all of the typical content tactics, but it's driven by this team of scientists helping scientists. And so it's inherently trusted by these very skeptical buyers.
No, I could not agree more. And, when you said something about podcasts, I'll just add that I publish podcasts a lot, but I don't publish as part of some strategy to necessarily be out one time a week or 5 times a week. I publish when I've got good content that I know my audience will trust. I think too many people, especially the agencies that have conditioned a lot of these clients into doing this, they put out content on a regular schedule just to put out content, not that something that would benefit me, the consumer, that helps build in that trust. And if somebody published something once a month rather than 4 times a month, but that once a month delivers more value, I can use that and create 4 other content shares on social and break it down to drive back to that one pillar page. I still don't understand why so many people think that they need to put out content just to put out content, because to your point exactly, it's eroding trust, not bringing people back in. How do you look at then how your role because again, you're a consultant, freelancer doing this, or if you were an agency, how would somebody like that do better work with a PhD to provide the kind of trusted content that they can form? Because most of the time, the folks with the PhDs, even at a stem cell company, are not going to be the ones writing it.
It's true, and I think that it would be dishonest of me as a consultant, as a guest on your podcast, to say you got to go hire a whole bunch of people in your customer base to become your marketers.
Exactly.
That's not realistic. But what I do think it points to is the need, and stem cells is a great example of just this is how one company has chosen to do it. So on one hand, the advice I'd give is do what works for you. To your point exactly, you don't have to publish every week if A, your buyers aren't, they don't have that kind of appetite, or B, you don't have the right resources to give it to them. But the other point is you really just need to really get at the heart of what it is that your buyers are looking for from you. I know this is like the most cliche advice that I'm sure 200 out of the 200 plus podcast guests that you've had have given, but knowing your buyers is the biggest asset a marketer can bring to a company. Who else in the business fits between a market and a company, the marketing department? But in B2B especially, we really, really suck at this. Like, we think we know our buyers.
Right.
We really do not. There's stats, and I will quote them. I think it's serious decision. 60% of B2B companies admit out loud that they do not understand their buyers. That's 60% who are willing to raise their hand and shame themselves. So I'd say the number's closer to 80, to be honest. On the flip side, other studies have found that most B2B customers, 70%, don't feel brands understand their business. I mean, these numbers are like embarrassing, and all of the fancy tech, all the acceleration you can do, automation, the scale, the reach that you can have with tech today in terms of amplifying your content, none of it matters unless you get this right. But this is one of those core skills that either hasn't been taught to a marketing audience, hasn't been taught to the content marketer, or is just overlooked and is going away. I don't know which it is. Is it dying, or do we just not have it?
Yeah, I don't know that I can answer that either. One thing I could not agree more with when I look at this is that I would much rather have you help articulate that PhD story, but that just the same way that brands look at their customers, agencies and consultants need to understand their end customers of their customers so that they can help articulate that story. And so I would much rather read an article from you rather than from a PhD if we were using stem cell as an example. But at the same time, I think the approach that we've just seen happen still too much is that too much of the marketing babble is flown in and it doesn't do a very good job at telling the marketing story anyway. So anyway, that's my take. So how do you look at the ROI with content marketing? This is something that is really coming up a lot. I know some friends in the space who've lost their jobs that were content marketers for different brands and different agencies. But this is always going to be an issue, is trying to justify the value or the return on investment. But if you're explaining this, especially to a CFO, the value of content marketing, how do you sort of justify it?
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you the answer that all consultants give to start, because it's like one of the disclaimers. It depends. There you go. I said the magic words that now release me from all accountability as you take this advice. But what it depends on are two things: the stage of your business, as well as the explicit goals that your, in this case, CFO, have laid out, not only for marketing, but for the business itself. So I think that one size fits all marketing advice about content marketing ROI does live out there. You can Google it. There are articles, and they're all relatively right. But again, I will always say this to anyone who listens to this podcast, me speak on stage, anything. Take everything with a grain of salt, because it really does have to do with your capabilities on the team, your business goals, and the stage that your business is at. I work with a lot of startups, for example, and they are in various stages of growth. Some are really early days in like the incubation stage, where they're just trying to figure out, are we building the right thing that people will actually pay for? Others are in, we've just gotten funding and we gotta grow quickly, high growth mode. And some are even further past it into scale mode, where they're just trying to like find the most effective way of spending money to grow at this incredible rate, repeatability, So, each one of those different clients in my case has very different, ROI metrics. The first thing I would do, most CFOs, just like most COOs or heads of sales, heads of product, they all look at marketing differently than they look at each other.
Yeah.
Think about it. So you and I, we consume marketing all day long. Like we see it everywhere we go, every channel we log on to, driving down the street with a billboard unless you're in Brazil. You really do see marketing everywhere you go, and every single person in our current modern culture. Yeah, totally. And what it does, though, is you don't do that with finance. You don't do the inner workings of R&D everywhere you go. So when it comes to these other disciplines, like nowhere else do people look at marketing and think, you know what, I understand marketing because I see it all day. I'm a consumer of it. I buy things, and therefore I am a marketing expert. Because of that, you have to do a lot of expectation setting in marketing. I think a lot of people think it's either magic or a complete waste of money, and both are wrong. It's the right answer, and the answer to your question of how do you measure content ROI is somewhere in the middle. You have to figure out what matters to the business, and you've got to figure out a really confident way of saying, I can help you get there. So for the people listening here that are in that phase of, okay, maybe you sit in B2B, and you inherently know because you've heard all the pundits tell you how wonderful content is. Maybe you've used it at another job. Your job now is requiring you to explain, what the hell am I spending all of this cash on relating to all these ebooks and webinars and field events and things that you want me to do to help educate the market. My advice to that crowd, that specific audience, is try to figure out the language of the business that's going to make people go, oh, yeah, that's valuable. So, for example, content marketing and thought leadership in particular are very effective at fixing the trust problem that I mentioned earlier, right? Because what you're doing is you're establishing an emotional connection with buyers, which increases trust, and that leads to the L word that every sales leader will love, loyalty. Every CEO loves because it means recurring revenue, loyalty. So, pivot your content ROI from traffic engagement metrics to, hey, this is going to help us drive repeat business, increase loyalty. You also might show them research that shows that, when you can exhibit more value to customers, when you can demonstrate that the quality of your thinking, right, is on the table, and you can actually make people pay a premium, right, you can now bring more value to customers. That also increases the lifetime value. So again, hook your wagon to that star of higher lifetime value, higher loyalty. When you are recognized as an expert in market, in a category, in a business, it leads to sales metrics that matter. Like, hey, we are making more shortlists. We are in more inquiries, more requests for proposal because people know that we are the recognized expert in our space. That's a metric that can directly be attributed to content marketing, but that affects the sales process and pipeline. You can also tell them, hey, if we're going to convince buyers that they are philosophically aligned with us, that we can get them thinking about the world the way that we see it, that's going to lead to a faster sales cycle because guess what? The sales criteria is now according to your worldview. So you're going to win more deals. You're going to actually increase the sales cycle. So there's a lot of these metrics that, we as marketing take for granted, differentiation. Well, so what? What that means for sales is if you have a differentiated brand and offer, that's a higher close rate. That's a higher price point that you can expect. These things matter to the rest of the business. We in marketing don't do a great job reaching across the aisle and really convincing them in their words what we're doing for the business.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, too, what little bit I can add to that is I wish that more marketers would push their leadership to push back somewhat on the CFO, or not push back, to establish the guidelines ahead of time. I think sometimes that we go into this trying to figure out and justify it on the back end without knowing what our plan is ahead of time. And that's a much easier conversation with any C-suite if we know, what we're doing moving forward instead of looking back and trying to justify it. And I've just found that a lot with brands, that I wish people would start to have that conversation a little more fully than they've done in the past. But anyway,
totally agree. Expectations matter. 100%.
Exactly.
If you have clear expectations, just like any other job role, you don't start if you're going to plan on keeping your job, you don't start a job without knowing exactly what that business expects of you.
Exactly.
Why in marketing do we walk into a door and assume that we know what they want from us? They may want something very different. It's our job as marketers to deliver growth, revenue, pipeline. So we just got to find a way of getting there and continually selling what we're doing for the business to the business at all times. We have two jobs, selling
Yeah.
the business and selling ourselves.
Well, you've worked with a lot of startups. How do startups work differently with content? A lot of people just think that's all they're going to put out because they have no money to spend on paid media. But, what's the mentality that you've seen with your own marketing brain as you've worked with those to where you're doing that more with larger brands today?
I think that startups have a dual challenge, right? They have a larger than life goal ahead of them. They've got to convince people to trust a new entity to market. Nobody knows who you are. They've also got to convince people to trust them, so not only pay attention to them, but trust them with money, with their B2B, with an incredibly important business procedure. But then they've got to do all that without much money and without much time. So it's like this double, you and I were talking earlier about the benefits of pressure and having a deadline. And it does make you more creative and resourceful.
Yeah.
So I do believe that startups are fun because you do your best work under pressure, right? But what it means is, there are two types of startups. One has a boatload of cash to go spend, and I will tell you like 2 or 3 brands right now that are good examples of this. The other type has no money. They're bootstrapping, or they've had a seed round, or there's just enough runway to get through the next 6 months. So you have to separate content marketing for these two types of startups because they look very different. I'll give you an example of companies that have a boatload of money upfront and can spend that money creating air cover through content marketing. They can build a category. They can establish themselves as thought leaders. They can publish ebooks, blogs, white papers, you name it. They've got money for it. Drift, here in Boston, conversational marketing. They've created an entire category from that. They've built great social amplification from all of their employees who are very active and sharing a ton of well done. I love the content that Drift is putting out.
Yeah.
Well done to them. They're doing that because of the success that their founders had from previous exits. They have more tolerance for risk. They have more money to spend on marketing, so they can afford to build a category through content. HubSpot did the same thing. They spent a lot of time, resources on building categories, even before the product itself kind of caught up to that vision. And it eventually did, and they were very successful because of that. One of our, again, another hometown Boston brand that has really put us in serious contention for, a hub in the city for tech. The problem is a lot of startups look at a Drift or a HubSpot and they think, well, that's content marketing for startups. It's not, unless you have money to spend on it. So most companies have to be really, really creative and resourceful with what they do. And this is where it comes in, where you really have to be willing to poke at what's wrong with the way things are done today. Some of the best content marketing at startups in the early days, if you have no money to spend, are the riskiest moves because you cannot afford to play it safe when you have no time, no money to do it. You've got to be clear about what I call exceptional truths. These are facts about the industry in which you work that might be hard to swallow, but will help you kind of break through the noise. Just because you're the only one willing to say what everyone else is thinking. A good example of this is Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux. Back in the day, I remember back in 2001, Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO of Microsoft at the time, said, "Oh, Linux is a cancer." Right? Everyone was like, "What is this guy talking about?" Linus had a very clear point of view in the world, and he made it very well known. He used to say, "Software is like sex. It's better when it's free." And he, of course, started this open source movement and all the ethos of Linux we all take for granted today. I mean, even Microsoft now, under the leadership of Satya Nadella, 15 years later after Steve Ballmer said it's a cancer, has fully embraced Linux. Microsoft loves Linux, right? So there's power in having a controversial point of view as a startup and then being consistent with that over time. Linux being a great example of what can take hold. You've got to be willing to just speak to what's wrong with the way things are done today and why does it matter for buyers. Another good example is VMware, Diane Green, right? She was as simple as saying, as a founder and CEO, saying, look, there's got to be a better way of utilizing CPU. There's got to be a better way to make use of the capacity at hand for our, she basically started the whole cloud computing movement with virtualization, right? Because she was willing to say, there has to be a better way. That's it. Because she said that, even in the early days of the business, people perked up, paid attention, and said, all right, I need a better way. You've convinced me there's a problem. What can you do to fix it? That's what a startup needs. That's what a startup at a cash-strapped company, that's what they should be thinking about when they're planning content marketing.
Sure. Well, kind of diving back into an earlier subject, we were talking about the content creators themselves. And I know this is going to come somewhat with some bias because you are an outsourced creator, but why should someone outsource content? That's another argument that a lot of brands are going through today is what should they pull back in-house?
It's a great question. I do think that many brands are asking, do we write content in-house or do we outsource it to someone else? There are risks and benefits to both. I think when a brand is deciding to outsource, it's because they don't have the resources internally to keep up with the demand. That's typically when someone like myself is brought in to say, either help us write or help us find somebody to write. Because our sales team needs stuff. We have all these great, byline opportunities. We have a bustling pipeline, a great marketing automation system. We need to feed the beast, right? So demand is typically what drives the decision to outsource. Where companies fall flat is they will then outsource to the lowest bidder rather than look for quality. I would rather you spend more money per word with the right writer or the right consultant and get less output, because it's going to be of higher value than I would getting more blog posts
Right.
at a cheaper cost per word. You're going to get what you pay for when it comes to outsourcing. Can I do a plug? Is that fair? Can I do a plug for a service that a great resource for finding subject matter expert writers for B2B?
Yeah, sure.
They're called N-Dash, NDASH.co. They're based here in Boston, and I used to run a group here in town called Boston Content. We were the largest. We still are. They are the largest content professional development group in New England. And they've actually inspired offshoots in Austin, Texas, and other parts of the country. It was a great movement. And N-Dash that's how I got introduced to these guys. And what they're building is a platform that you can go on and basically search by topic. Hey, IT security is a big hot topic of mine, endpoint security. I need somebody who gets that space. Again, don't forget, back to that stem cell research. People that understand, that can show the buyers they understand that world. I need someone to write XYZ about that. And so you can find them on this platform. You just pay them per piece, and it's a really fantastic way of getting beyond your four walls of the business. But make sure that you're looking for people that have not only domain expertise, if that's important to you. Say they don't. Say that you hire someone like a former journalist. That's okay. Just make sure they can ask your subject matter expertise the right questions. That's the key. You either hire an expert to write it who's got great writing chops, or you hire someone like a journalistic mind that can ask the right questions to get at the real story.
Agreed. So what are some of the best ways not to silo your content marketing efforts? Because if you are outsourced or you're on a lot of different teams, I'm very much a big proponent of keeping messaging together and aligned, not a bunch of mixed messaging across 50 different channels delineated across 50 different teams for any decently large size brand, which is what we tend to do.
We do. It's really, really easy to silo, especially in marketing with all the different tactics and all the different teams. I think for me, the biggest area of siloed work in companies is actually with PR and content marketing, which sounds kind of surprising. People don't realize that in most bigger firms, especially B2B or more traditional teams, departments that were built out years ago and haven't really evolved, the PR team responsible for things like thought leadership and influencer media relations, awards or speaking, events, sometimes social media, are sometimes completely separated from the content marketing team, which is really dangerous because really they have the same goals. Both have the same goals of elevating the right storylines, defining categories, creating priority for a brand in market, creating demand, building air cover for sales or getting funding, and increasing credibility. I mean, these are all, and you could say that was a list of goals for the PR team or a content marketing department. Typically, though, where the biggest gap is when the demand gen team might own content and the PR team and the comms team is either a different building in a different headquarters. It's kind of like a centralized marketing team or headquartered corporate marketing. My biggest recommendation for content pros and companies that are embracing both great modern PR and great content, break down that wall, bring those two teams together, allow what you're doing in content to be amplified by what you're doing in PR. When they work together, you have much more consistency of message, you have much more alignment internally, which brings more efficiency, and you've got this very bold and very clear vision where these two teams can work together and therefore be more effective as a whole. You amplify. Think about it as being the same message on every channel from one brand. That is a pipe dream for most distributed teams, but that is the reality of what our attention shop buyers need. They need consistency from you. So you've got to build that consistency internally.
Very good. Katie, this is one of my most important content questions I ask everybody who's been on a shark's perspective. What is your favorite kind of shark and why?
I'll be honest, I don't know anything about sharks, but in preparation for this podcast, I Googled shark facts. Can I just give you one of those as an answer?
I would love for it. Love for you to.
I was shocked to find out that you're more likely to get hit by lightning than to be killed in a shark attack.
You're more likely to get hit by a coconut from a palm tree than get killed by a shark.
I had no idea. I feel safer now about going in the water.
Yeah, apparently there's a lot of mean palm trees out there and lightning bolts I get, but yeah. So anyway, Katie, are you ready for the 5 most interesting and important questions that you're going to be asked today?
I hope so. Let's do it.
All right. Number 1, Ben Affleck or Matt Damon? We got to ask a local Boston question.
Oh, God. Do I have to choose?
Yeah.
Matt's accent isn't as offensive. We'll go with Matt.
Okay. Yeah, he didn't screw up Batman, so he's obviously the right answer. All right, number 2, the Boston Red Sox or your fast pitch softball league, the Scouts?
Oh, I have to go with the Girl Scouts. At least we have a coach right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
the Red Sox
no
have,
scandals.
No management.
Yeah, you haven't had
we
any...
have no scandals. We drink a lot of beer during games, and it was a great time.
Are you stealing a lot of signals using video equipment?
We just try to peek over the bench.
Yeah, there
we
you
do
go.
It old school. Extra
beer. All right, number 3, J-Lo or Shakira? It's a good Super Bowl halftime.
Did you see that tongue move from Shakira that went viral last night?
Yes, I did.
It actually was it was some kind of a celebratory move, and I'm going to butcher the name of it, but if you Google it, it was from her Lebanese roots. So that like tongue move, like in the camera, she does it a lot when she performs. Mm-hmm. It was completely viral, but now everyone's talking about like Lebanese culture because everyone's like, what was that? So she totally wins for the most viral moment of the whole Super Bowl in my mind. That was wonderful.
Well, so 1, I've seen her do that move before, and 2, there's not a wrong answer. I love them both equally. So, but I thought that Super Bowl show was fantastic, and that I did not know it was going to be that good. I'm a little disturbed about Pitbull's new beard, but on the pregame stuff. But J-Lo and Shakira were amazing. So.
They were great. And one more thing I'll say about them is I really love that they called out Puerto Rico in their, I thought that was so important. There's so much happening. I was just in Puerto Rico with my wife in December. We had an amazing time, and the day that we left was the day that they had gut-wrenchingly horrific earthquakes throughout the island. They're already dealing with so much. So I do think Puerto Rico needs a little bit more support, and to remember that they are our American brothers and sisters. They are our, compatriots. So good for J-Lo and Shakira for having a statement during the show.
Agreed. All right, number 4, Tom Brady or Bill Belichick?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Yeah, they're both gods in Boston, so.
They really are. I will have to say I'm a younger Patriots fan. So for me, I grew up watching Tom Brady. So I'm sorry to say it. I know it's going to get a lot of boos. Somebody probably just unsubscribed from a newsletter after hearing this. Everyone hates Tom Brady. But yeah, he honestly put us on the map in my lifetime of watching the Patriots. My father really would probably say Bill Belichick, though.
Yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan, but he's got 6 rings. So what are you going to argue about? So,
You
number
know, haters gonna hate.
exactly. Number 5, and the most important question that you're going to be asked today is biscuits or cornbread.
Oh, cornbread all day,
All right.
all day.
Well, Katie, where do people find out more about you, see your speaking engagements, grab the newsletter, and more?
I will shamelessly plug my new documentary that I'm working on called Pandemonium, which explores the intersection of social movements in our weird modern world of marketing. So I'm working on that now actively. Please find out more at katie-martell.com, where you can sign up for a what I call the world's best newsletter. And I really, really would love if you were, part of this journey with me on this documentary. So thank you in advance to everyone who comes over and subscribes. And hey, thank you so much, Sharks. This was a lot of fun.
More than welcome. Katie, thank you so much for being with us today on A Shark's Perspective. So there was my conversation with Katie Martell, an on-demand marketer and communication strategist, and a self-proclaimed unapologetic marketing truth-teller. Let's take a look at 3 key takeaways from my conversation with her. First, thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with today's guest talking about content marketing. She and I ran on some similar topics. And even I on occasion wonder if what I've seen in my own career is just siloed to my experience. But I hear a lot of the same all the time from marketers all over the world. And I absolutely love her comment. And it's a question that all content creators should ask. And that is, how do we create trust in a world of noise? There is so much to unpack from that. As she said, it's not enough to be valuable. She brings up whether buyers can see themselves in our content. And how often are you putting out your content on an artificial calendar that you created or on a schedule when you know that there's an actual appetite for them to consume? And knowing your buyer, that being the biggest asset you have as a brand. Yet most brands, especially B2B, don't know that customer well. That is so very, very true. And I often see it in my own practice as well. Really love her commentary here again as we uncover some uncomfortable truths. Second, you hear me talk a lot on this show about attribution and measurement, and content marketers constantly struggle with this. Rarely do they properly plan out their KPIs with an emphasis on the word properly. Leaving it to chance, for lack of a better phrase, shouldn't be an option, especially as you engage leadership for input on their expectations. This isn't rocket surgery, but it's often uncomfortable conversations helping those other departments to understand what to expect. Have a deeper discussion with your leadership and then help lead them away from vanity metrics instead of those that focus more on the customer and the content they consume. And as she said, the one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work, so please don't groupthink your metrics. It's what matters to your business and your consumer. Measure what helps your consumer get from here to there. Third, every time I think that I'm complaining too much about silos based on my own experience, then another expert like Katie comes in and tells me the reality is that she's seeing the same thing every day. Knock down every silo you can, whether it's internal or external. Your customer doesn't care about the sausage making process behind the walls of your company. You'll make better content for the consumer without silos. Got a question? Send me an email to kenneth@asharksperspective.com. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Be fearless in your content creation, be a shark, and join us on the next episode of A Shark's Perspective.